Hey guys, Seán here. Welcome to another edition of the Any Given Run Day podcast. A slightly later edition of the Any Given Run Day podcast because it is a bank holiday Monday where I am recording this one.
Not
But I'm
over
not
it
too sure.
here.
Yeah, I'm not
No,
too sure.
here.
I was going to build you in on that one a little
No.
bit more, but you take over, mister. I can run under 25 minutes for a 5K in the sun now.
Yeah, look, some of us get extra holidays. Isn't that right, Seán? You're off enjoying yourself in the weekend, and poor me over here getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to record a podcast, and you weren't even there. But sure, look, it's all right. We won't mention it. We won't mention it, record it, or publicise it.
I
Anyway,
walked four
how
or
was your
five.
weekend?
No, it was really good. I had my first pint in like 8 months. Now I walked 4 or 5 kilometers along the beach to get to that pub to have a pint, and I walked 4 or 5K back too to burn off the calories. And while walking back, I messed up my Achilles, but I felt it being a little bit sore. I was wearing my new Rock Under Armour shoes. It was really flat and great for training. Not so great for walking. So I'm actually wearing a sock now at night. It only came today actually from Amazon. I went to the physio last week, get my Achilles sorted out. Now it sounds half like a gimmick, but it's like you wrap this big, it's like a football sock, except the toes of it, there's like a big strap at the end of it, and it pops up towards just underneath your knee, and you tie it up. So make sure, like when I sleep, my toes point out of the bed pretty much. So this one kind of elevates it up, and it seemingly helps to get a proper position on your foot. So you wake up in the morning, you haven't got that kind of strain on your heels. I wouldn't try anything now because I'm going on week 4 without running, Eric. So I'm really struggling right now, and I'm signed up for the marathon and everything else. So I'm trying just about anything this stage to get myself back up and going again. So I keep in touch on how that's going to work. But I had the physio session on my calf, loosened it out. The Achilles felt great for a couple of days afterwards. Like, I might run on Monday. And then Sunday night, walking back from pints. I felt it. I felt it in my Achilles when walking, man. Really annoying. But, let's talk about you and how you're running sub 25.
Let me get this straight. You just waffled on there for about 2 minutes.
I just wanted to brush over it.
You bought knee-high socks to go to bed at night. Did you buy them, or was it a gift?
The physio actually told me, she goes, look, Seán, you're going to need them. It's not much of a turn on nighttime, but they might help out.
All right. Yeah, look, I believe you, but millions who are listening wouldn't.
I bought knee-high sock. I thought I was getting a good bargain on it, but only one came. It wasn't a pair. I was like, why is it €30 for a pair? That's dear enough. I saw one for 13 quid with Amazon Prime Delivery. I'm like, I'll grab a pair of them. And then only one of them arrived. I'm like, I'll try it on the bad foot, I suppose. So I wore it for an hour today, man. It's the most uncomfortable thing. It just bends my toes back more than anything else. So I'm not too sure I'm going to sleep out tonight. And after having the last few nights late and I'm up in the morning for 5 in the morning, I'm probably going to be half awake with this thing hanging off my foot.
I'd say after a night or two, like I know you got me clear braces there. The first couple of nights it was just different. It was weird because you weren't used to it. There was something else in about it. It's just going to be weird for the first night or two. And then after that, it should be okay. But yeah, like anything, I probably wouldn't get too dependent on it. But yeah.
No.
But although I'm noticing we've been, obviously with the warmer weather, we've been barefoot quite a lot actually, and I'm noticing a big difference in my feet actually. A lot more comfortable. I was cramping up on the first couple of days, but now it's actually I'm feeling quite good actually. Good distance, but you went on a walk, and this is what a lot of people are doing. A lot of people are getting out there and they're exploring. Mm-hmm. I think so this week we've got something different planned, haven't we?
We do indeed, yeah, because you are on your wild adventures over in America, and you're not alone in those ventures. You just happen to be right next to a hiking expert that we're about to introduce right after we hit the intro music to the podcast. So we're going to be talking a little bit about hiking and stuff. And look, when we're talking about footwear there a second ago, in terms of if someone rang me and said, hey, we're going for a hike up the mountains or we're heading up to Sugarloaf or anywhere else, I'd be like, grand, I'm going to stick on a pair of Jordans and on up I go. I know nothing else apart from that. So I'm very interested to hear a thing or two or learn a thing or two about a thing or two in this week's episode of the podcast.
Cool. Well, let's crack into it, so and we'll get on with the show.
Okay, right after our producer hits that intro music.
Good man, Seán.
Yeah, he's class. And we're right back. Eric, I'm going to let you do the honors this week and introducing our guest to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. Don't mess it up because you always put a lot of pressure on me for doing these sort of intros. So you have to set the bar pretty high for yourself. With that said, go ahead.
You messed up your psych out there, Seán. It was terrible. This week on the podcast, Any Given Run Day, we actually have a hike day. So, I suppose we can call it any given hike day this week, Seán. But I'm joined this week with Seán. Seán's over with me in the US here, and we've been doing a good bit of training together. It was only in the last couple of days we actually started talking about hikes around Ireland and all the different places we've seen through work and through our personal. But beyond work, I never really went hiking. I did Glendalough and I've done the odd trail here and there. It's never really been my scene to get up into mountains. But Seán, you have. Sorry, I must introduce this to Seán Curran. Seán's going to be talking to us about it. How are you, Seán?
I'm good, Eric. Thanks very much, and thanks very much for having me on the podcast.
No bother. But as I was saying there, Seán, we've talked about it, and you absolutely love it. We actually had a thing here because we're in quarantine and we're really bored, so the conversation gets a bit limited. So we had this thing where we were like, do we prefer the beach or do we prefer the mountains?
And remember that in Alabama there aren't too many hills about, so they're missing them at home.
So there's no hills. Well, there's hills, there's no mountains, and yes, we had this argument for a while, and then it was only this that brought on the conversation that you wouldn't trade the mountains for anything, would you?
No, absolutely not. No, there's only so much really sitting on the beach that you can do, and it's nice when we're walking on the bare feet and it's good on the sand, but like that, you get sick of it eventually, and you end up like me getting burnt to bits. So I like heading up to the hills. We've got all my jumps and everything on, so I'm fully covered. That's a place that I like to be, and that's where I'm comfortable.
How did you get into it? Was it through work that you got into the hiking, or what?
No, actually, it started at a much younger age. So my auntie took me out from quite a young age into the hills, and I didn't really appreciate it at the time. And I remember her always saying to us, "You're going to be walking in the hills. You'll take your friends up there. You'll be down in Kerry with your girlfriend and everything." And after it all went straight over my head, and I thought, not a chance. Like, why would I do that? But sure enough, as the years went on, I found myself quite comfortable in the hills. That's where I wanted to be. And soon I started taking my friends up there just in my own time and everything. We'd go for the weekends. Once I learned how to drive, particularly, that was a big factor in it. And we used to head up to the hills and be going with a different group of people every weekend. And sure enough, then that interest was only expanded, and the experience only expanded then after joining the military. And that gave us more exposure to the hills, learned even more lessons, and learned more about the equipment that you can take up there. And I've been up there at least. I haven't been up there as much as I'd like to be, but at least once a month. And then when I have more time for myself, I'm getting up there every weekend, trying to make it up there at least every Saturday. So you can decide how much time you spend, or how much time you can afford to spend in the hills. You can go for a day, or you can go for several days. Even if it's only a couple of hours, there's always a lot to gain up there. So yeah, my interest has been there for a long time. I didn't know the seeds were being planted when I was younger, but they were. Here we are now.
I'd have to agree with you, because when I was growing up, my dad was in the military as well, so he obviously knew about the mountains, Wicklow, and all the different training areas. So he used to bring me. Now I was obviously a lot younger and wasn't too keen at traipsing around the mountains for 4 or 5 hours, but like that, like I've kind of always been around those kind of places, and naturally through him we've had a sandwich, we've had a flask, we've made a day of it, we've gone for a picnic. And it's what we're really seeing now, isn't it? We're seeing a lot of people now through lockdown. Now everyone's having a staycation, unlike us now. Well, we're locked in, but we're not at home. But seeing a lot of people getting out there with the stairway to heaven, with Glendalough. But then there are a few people who are taking on the likes of Braehead, Sugarloaf, and a few others. But there's a lot of we'll call them uncharted little gems out there that only when you get a bit more hiking experience you can find, isn't it?
Well, that's it, and that's what a lot of people are finding at the moment, is that once the restrictions are being lifted enough that people are allowed out to these public places, that places like Glendalough and all get absolutely jam-packed full of people. You find it hard to get parking, you find it hard to get onto a route that's away from people. As much as it is nice to meet people up there, it's another thing entirely if you're trying to constantly dodge people and you have to step off the trail and your hike is being interrupted by constant flow of people coming up and down. So it's nice to get into these other places that, I'd like to say, are a little bit more uncharted, and you can get into wildlife a bit more, and you can walk through the forests and the trails. And that's what I plan to do, is share some of those secrets and share some of the trails. And it's going to require a certain amount of skill. So that's another thing I like about hiking as well, is that it's not just pure fitness. There is a technical and intellectual aspect to it as well, which I hope to share with people, and how to read maps and how to do all the stuff like that. You integrate navigation as well as building in the fitness element.
I'm a complete beginner to this, so I've done a little bit of hikes, and I've been going up to Tree Rock and a few different things like that. So as a complete beginner, and obviously the obvious one you're saying is Glendalough, where do you start on looking for different hikes, and as a different parts you would recommend for people to start in terms of what kind of mountains and stuff to do first, what equipment to bring, and how long they should be? Like, so coming from a running background, we wouldn't get people to do 10K straight away. What would you recommend for people starting off doing hikes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that you want to start off with something very basic in terms of navigation. The last thing you want to do is get lost with no experience about to get yourself out of there. So I'd say stick to the trails at first. Most places with trails are going to be reasonably easy to make your way through. There's some that might be a little bit more difficult, but I'll be able to make recommendations on places that are easier to start with. Glendalough, wouldn't even call that easy, probably moderate even, with some of the steep inclines in it. But there are other trails around the place that offer a smaller loop that you can get into it with, and you can use very, very basic equipment. If you're sticking on the trail, there's normally people around. Most people have a pair of runners that they can go walking in. That's all that's really required. Have a look at the weather before you go, and that's really it. Then as you progress further, you do need to start looking at more equipment because you start coming off trail, or you might have to jump from one trail over to another, and you might have to go a little bit cross country. And if you're doing any of that whatsoever, you really want some good ankle support, and that's where you start looking at the boots. And once you're wearing boots, you have to start looking at the socks. I'm a big fan of socks. So
Seán loves socks.
I know. I'm not slagging you off here.
Seán has one sock to go hiking.
Yeah, no, I'm always the guy who's excited to get a pair of socks for Christmas.
It is a good thing as well. Like, I suppose, like, for people starting out, a lot of people actually go out and they take on Glendalough and they spend I think it's the white loop, is it? The white one is about 10k, 10k. It's the whole up around up the steps. Most people take that on, but they don't realise they've taken on actually quite a substantial hike. It's about 2 or 3 hours of hiking. Okay, you're stopping for your photographs. There's a serious climb, depending on which way you go, either by the waterfall. Those who have been know what I'm talking about, either by the waterfall or up the steps. Like, both of them are quite a substantial workout in themselves. Yeah, it's definitely not an easy one. And then even there's stuff closer to Dublin. You have Ticknock and you have the Grey Sugarloaf. I've seen a lot of people doing the Sugarloaf and Braehead as well. Yeah. Nice little challenges.
And again, that one's actually quite off trail as well. There is a trail most of the way up, but there's a lot of scree on that hill. Again, you want proper footwear for going up there. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to offer some advice and some recommendations to people on how to navigate that sort of terrain, because like that, it's one that a lot of people are very interested in doing.
What about the weather? Like, how do you know? Like, so obviously, when we're going for a run, and we know, okay, right, we could get wet here for an hour, but when you're going up into the hills, you're kind of exposed to the elements. To me, like, being up there for 4 hours in the lash and the rain is just not fun. How do you make it fun? Now, I know there's the whole thing. There's no such thing as bad weather. It's just good clothing, but how do you manage yourself if you were to find yourself up there when you get wet or you get cold, or what's the best way about it? At least to encourage people, because obviously we have a great summer months here for hiking, but how do people take this on in the winter?
Yeah, so you really got to stay ahead in terms of the weather and look at the forecast. You know, sometimes it just might be absolutely raining down and might be nothing you can do about that. So you've got to decide, is this the day that I want to go hiking? Have I got the proper equipment for it? Because, like you say, the equipment is going to make a difference. If you haven't got the proper boots, you're going to find yourself slipping and sliding all over the place. It's not going to be a fun time. You're going to open yourself up to injury. But if you've planned your route correctly and you do have the proper equipment, you'll find yourself feeling almost impervious to the rain. And it can add another element to it, in fact, and it can be more fun to navigate. I only recently got myself stuck up in the hills in a dense fog, and it became a good navigation challenge. So I had to slow the pace down a little bit. It was a little bit less of a crease job, but the navigation skill then had to kick in, and it really put the skills to use. So it becomes a different kind of fun, really. But the weather is definitely something you just have to embrace when you're up there, because it's totally unpredictable, really. Even it could be nice and sunny down in the flat lands down below, but up in the hills you can just get rain, because you get that weather pushing in, being lifted up by the hills and causing its own whole weather system up there.
So what are the essentials, I suppose, for everyone going on a hike in terms of equipment? I know you're talking about boots and good socks and all the rest, but I'm assuming you're carrying some sort of rucksack or something with you. Like, what would you absolutely have to have going on one of these hikes?
So I recommend for someone who's just starting off, boots are quite a big investment. So probably just go with runners and just stick to the trails. If you want a good pair of trousers, just to keep protect your legs from either the sun or if there's ponds or anything up there, to go to there, or even if you fall, like in the likes of Glendalough, if you fall on that those benches, the planks of wood with the chicken wire on it, That would be quite painful if you were to fall on that. So I would recommend a good pair of trousers, something that's reasonably thick, and probably not jeans. If you're looking for something that's more malleable than jeans but stronger than tracksuit bottoms. Something in between, like a cargo pants type thing. And then aside from that, you want to layer up. So you want to have a t-shirt, maybe even a second t-shirt or some other underlayer on. Have a jumper with you. Probably don't walk with it. I'd always recommend feeling a little bit cold. And then when you stop, that's when you want to put on all your layers. That's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is that they try to walk and be warm, and then they'll sweat out their jumper and they've got no warm layer to put on them when they stop.
We had a good example in work. We woke up really, really early in the morning, like with no sleep, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, right, you have to make it over this mountain to whatever by a certain time. And I was absolutely freezing, and it was absolutely bucketing down. So I put on all my wet gear, and like everyone knows that, well, wet gear is like wearing black bags. So, but I was really cold, so I put it on and put on the big bags and stuff, and start trucking out over the mountain. But within 10 minutes, to say the sweat was absolutely dropping off me was an understatement. There was there was no stopping to take this off. Well, we had time to keep, and people were watching, and it's definitely a key thing about the layering up and layering down, isn't it, Sean? So the idea is to have lots of little items of clothing. So an Under Armour top and a t-shirt over it, and then maybe a light jumper, and then a light rain jacket then if it gets wet. Because once you're moving, you're going to be warm, I suppose. It's the essential of that.
And even on the wet gear, you would think that might be one of the essential things, but once you open the hills and if it starts coming down heavy, you're just probably going to get wet anyway. The only time you're going to really use your rain gear is if you're sitting down in the rain, having your lunch. So if you know it's going to be a wet day and you're probably not going to have a chance, you're probably not going to have the choice of whether you're going to stop when it stops raining or if it's just coming down constantly. Then it might be worth bringing up a set of rain gear. But aside from that, if it just rains while you're up there, you're just going to get wet. So I always have a full spare change of dry clothes back in the car for when I get back. Aside from that, that's really the main.
It is a good little tip, actually. A lot of people actually forget that when they're going on the hikes. Now, it's grand now when the sun is shining, but when you're out there, like, you get wet and you get back to the car, it is nice to have a full change. And a lot of people kind of forget that. But I see a lot of people heading down the Kerry direction, though.
Yes.
And a lot of people are starting to try and get the notions of taking on Carrauntoohil. Sean, how hard is it? I've never been up it, but how hard is it to take on Carrauntoohil?
I actually only did it for the first time earlier this year, just before lockdown. And it surprised me with how difficult it was. I mean, I thought I was ready for it, but it's quite difficult. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can go in, more than a couple. There's actually a whole heap of ways that you can get up that hill. But no matter what way you go, it's a long way up and it's a long way down. So you can decide how steep you want to be able to take it, or you can go the longer way around. But either way, it's a long out hike and it is hard on the legs.
Yeah, so like I know a lot of people are doing it, and there's a lot of people out there stubborn like myself that would go up there tomorrow and say, I'll get up this hill. It's not a good idea though, is it? It is important to try and... You're
opening yourself up to injury there. Like that, a lot of people would have the stubborn mentality and be able to get themselves up to the top. It doesn't take a huge, phenomenal amount of mental effort to do that. We are opening yourself up to the possibility of injury because most of it is off trails and having to climb over rocks, scree, uneven ground, and there's some of the areas in Marshy as well. They're all rocky on the top, and the winds can pick up quite strong up there as well. So you really want to be properly prepared going up there and have some sort of experience under your belt.
I suppose one of the other big ones, you wouldn't recommend going up Crow Patrick in your bare feet, would you?
No, you wear one of those night socks that you have. We did a race called Steep and Summit. A great race out in Westport. We do it every year. The gang of us go down and we take on Steep and Summit. We run up it, well, I say run, I walk briskly up the mountain. But some run it and some supreme athletes can get up there in a couple of strides. But running up that mountain, right? Like loose gravel, screedy rocks from like the shoulder all the way to the top. Like it is like sharp rocks. Like it is not nice at all. And anyone who's done it will know exactly what I'm talking about. Because I have that thought every time I do that race. I'm like, one, why did I do this race? I hate this mountain. And two, how do people go up it in their bare feet? Would you ever climb a mountain in your bare feet, Seán?
No, absolutely not. I wouldn't walk on it.
Yeah, but it's I always ask myself that every time I see it when we do that race, and that's why I do kind of appreciate the hiking side of it, because when you're in a race and you're running and you're trying to get to the top as quickly as possible, the fun of climbing a hill or a mountain definitely goes out of it. And that's where as well you kind of need to know your limits as well about climbing or going hiking as well. Like hiking can be fun. It can be a good day out. It can be a nice long walk. And like we talked about in the intro, Seán, with the appropriate footwear, it's actually really enjoyable. And a pair of Asics or something that's better than your stylish runners or your Toms or something to get you up the hill will be enjoyable if you take your time and you pick something
you put the nail on the head there. You put the nail on the head there really with being able to enjoy the sights and stuff. So you can take it nice and slow and you still get a solid workout there, because you're out there, remember, for I could be up there for up to 8 hours really in a day, and even longer if you want to. But you could be up there for an hour or two even either. It's up to you entirely, but you get to enjoy the site and walk through, and the environment's constantly changing. You can be walking through a forest 1 minute and then you're walking over summiting a hill in the next and overlooking the likes of Blessington. And you can, on a good vid day, you'll see right out across the country as far as the sweet blooms from the Wicklow Hills, which is something that you don't get necessarily from running everywhere. Eric knows here that I'm not a great fan of running, and he's been putting me through my paces over here. But hiking would really be my scene, because the environment's constantly changing. You've got something nice to look at the whole time.
We've seen a lot of those, like Ozzy's been posting up a lot of his trail runs and stuff. And the Wicklow Way, and there is so many of those designated kind of walking spots that wouldn't be too difficult, wouldn't be too challenging, that are definitely worth getting out and having a look at. You were about to say something, Seán. Sorry, I cut you off.
You're talking there, Seán, about just different sites and stuff, and I'm seeing a lot. I don't know if it's a recent trend, but to me, from the outside looking in on hiking, it seems like a recent trend. A lot of people are starting to do more night hikes, which I suppose completely takes the sights and stuff out of it. Have you had much experience with that, or would you prefer more the daytime kind of thing?
Yeah, we have done some of the night hikes with the military, but I wouldn't really recommend it for anyone who's not so experienced. There's a couple of reasons, mainly to do with that it does become more dangerous, both in terms of navigation and in terms of making your way across the terrain, where it is harder to see in front of you. You can get yourself into some very dark spots out there. And you really want to be on top of your navigation game, really, in order to be able to make your way around in the dark, because it's a totally different game altogether. And then secondly, I wanted to say as well, like, it is dangerous out there. There is all sorts that happen in the hills in the middle of the night, and you're potentially putting yourself in danger. So you just want to be able to have yourself covered. I wouldn't recommend night hiking to someone who's inexperienced. I'd want to have a good bit of experience under your belt before you attempt something like that.
Now, there is a lot of companies out there that are doing guided night hikes as well, and if you are interested in getting involved with a night hike, definitely you should have someone like Seán with his own cycle, or someone like this company that's kind of willing to guide you and make sure that you're safe from one way to another. And you'll probably find that a lot of these hikes, they're not the danger. They're on a trail, they're on a path, they're on a this, they're on a that. They're
that's it. And there'll be someone to guide you along, and they'll have someone informed of what time they're supposed to be back at and everything. So, if anything somehow did go wrong, there's plenty of people around to do something about that. I just wouldn't recommend people going out in ones or twos and not telling anyone that they're heading out there. So you'd want a decent bit of planning. But planning really is what it comes down to.
For yourself, would you get more of a kick out of the daytime, nighttime, or is it all just different challenges for you?
All this different challenges, really, but to be honest, I think there's more versatility in the daytime hiking, because you can push yourself that bit further, that bit faster, cover more distance, and still use your navigation skills just as much as you would in a night hike.
A night hike for Seán, you've never done one, I don't think, but
no.
We were doing, we're not on the trails like when we were doing it and training in the navigation element at night. You're in forests in pitch black, full cloud cover, no moonlight. You can barely see your hand in front of your face, and you're trying to find this point in the middle of the mountains to tag your card and then move on to the next one. And it's like you start to hear rustling in the trees and stuff, and you're like, oh, who's in there? What's over there? You start to see the pink elephants and the red leprechauns and everything that's going around, because trees start to look like giant people. And so there is an element when you're on, and when we did that navigation, you're totally isolated. You're on your own. You're not allowed to pair with anyone. You have to separate. So the way we did it was you're totally on your own. You have to navigate around a certain area. Now, you have to reach certain checkpoints, and there's GPS tracking and stuff. So if you do get lost, you can be found and stuff. But it also monitors that two of you aren't in cahoots getting around the course together because you're scared in the dark, which I definitely was. But it is an interesting thing, and there's definitely there's two elements to it. If you do get an experienced guide who goes at night, Seán will probably agree with me. It's a fantastic experience to see how dark you can get in the forest at night. It's brilliant to see how little you can see, and it is a challenge in itself. And then apart from that, then the daytime, as I said, it's so much fun to just get out and see the sceneries for the Instagram, for the hunts, for the active wear, for anyone who wants to get out. And then more so for the family, you can definitely bring people out there to have a look at the sites, as opposed to when you're going on a night hike. Being honest, most times if you're in a small group, you spend 90% of your time scared that you're lost or scared that there's someone following. But it's definitely it is good if you do have a group of people. It'll be a fantastic experience.
Something that I would recommend trying at some point, but like that, something that's worth building up to. And I would say the main event really is in the daytime hiking. The nighttime hiking is something to try, but that would be down the line for someone who's only starting to get into the game or wouldn't make a night hike your second or third one. Something to possibly work towards and keep in the back pocket.
Seán, any hidden gems out there? We know about Glendalough, we know about Carrickatool, we know about Crowpatrick. Obviously, there's the big ones that comes to my mind. Is there any one or two you would recommend that you wouldn't hear talked about that much? And I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here, but anything that comes to mind?
There's I couldn't give you the names of them, to be honest, but I can point them out on a map to you. And a lot of them don't even have a name, and that's why they don't be found so much, because people aren't flocking to them, because there isn't actually really a name on them. There is a small little place I go to with a little bit of a forest, and it just has a trail around. There's no major hills. It's actually in a reasonably flat area, but it's just on the run in towards Blessington, so right. It's actually only barely into Wicklow at all. But it's just a small forested area, and you can run up and down some smaller hills. And it's good for if it's just a little bit closer by. It's only a 20-minute journey from me in the car, so it means I can get down there and go for a run around there. And it's closer to the trail running, but you can throw a backpack on your back either.
Do you think it's one of those things where you just kind of like get involved with different people, different hikes, and all of a sudden they're like they show each other the hidden gems? Or is there any particular way you would, like, if you're looking for something different, how would you go about finding a new hike trail for yourself? Or is it just one day you go to a mountain spot, you go for a wander?
A bit of both, really. Yeah, to be honest, I'd say getting involved with your community, you might find other people who have a different way of going about somewhere. So I've been up Mullaghly Vaughan a good few times, but almost every time I've gone up there, I've met someone else who's coming up at a different direction. And it becomes a totally different hike when you do that. And you come across these other lovely little places that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, maybe if you just keep coming up the same way. And like that as well, then if you have the little bit of navigation experience, or you're trying to test yourself out that little bit, you can try and set a target for yourself and just try and get to some other point on the map. And that will quite often bring you across some absolute gem of a place in the middle of the hill.
We might do, Seán, is we might just ruin nature altogether, and we get Seán to post up a couple of Seán's hidden gems and just give people a little link on a map to go and try out.
100%.
The locals will hate us, but everyone else will.
Yeah, just to clarify for the listener, that Seán hidden gem has absolutely zero to do with me. Although I do prefer going up to the mountains over being on the beach, because I'm no good down there either.
I am definitely a beach person, 100%.
No, well, you know that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's it's a really interesting one. It's really great to see so many people getting out and being active. So many people getting out and trying to hike that never would have. And I have seen a lot of people getting involved with these night hikes, and it's a fantastic idea, and credit to the people who are organising as well. But like everything, people see when those things become normalised, people kind of take out the risk elements and think they can do it themselves, and it is something to be careful of. It is something that just you and a couple of your friends are going up. Make sure someone is experienced and knows how to go, and make sure you let someone know that where it is you are going. If you are going off trail as well, we see from your side of the work elements, people have to be taken off mountaintops and stuff by rescue teams and helicopters, etc. So, make sure someone knows exactly where you're going as well. It's a big tip to hiking. and it's something Seán lived by religiously here, that he'd always let one of us know where he's going on any of his hikes. But it's fantastic to see the trend, and it is something for all the family. And like Seán said in the intro, like if you want to bring your girlfriend or your cousin or anything, it's a great day out. It's a great day out to just chat, forget about things. And the best thing about the mountains, phone signal tends to be crap, so no one can contact you. Now, it works two ways. You find it difficult to contact someone if you're in trouble, but
yeah,
it means the WhatsApps aren't really going. It means the phone calls aren't coming in. It's a good way to escape for a couple of hours.
It's one of the few places in the whole country that you'll find total silence. It's absolutely fantastic, just getting up into the hills and hearing nothing but the wind whistling through the heather. It's really an experience that you can't get anywhere else. It's just such a surreal feeling once you're up there. Sometimes you could be on a beach or have a hike, but you just want to stop and just enjoy it. And quite often we do.
Yeah, and that's the beauty about it. You can't stop. Yeah. You know, it's there to be enjoyed. It's there to be not endured. It's there to be enjoyed. Like it is something that's brilliant, and it's great to see so many people doing it. And hopefully over the next few weeks, Seán, we might start putting out a few little tips and tricks for the trails. And
I'm hoping to get people into planning their hikes properly, because that's really the most crucial part in terms of what gear to bring. And then I'm going to bring in some navigation pieces as well to teach people how to make their way around safely around any hills in the country.
So Seán, we're going to see you getting yourself out there on the hills while we're over here on the beach. Is that right?
Wait, did this Seán over here?
Yeah, that's Seán over there.
Well, I tried the beach over the weekend. It did not go well for me, lads. So I may as well try the mountains. I got to just over knee height, and I have no circulations in my ankles. My ankles felt like they're going to fall off. I have all sorts of problems going on with me. So, yeah, I will try the mountains, but the only map I've looked at is Google Maps, so I'm not too sure how to read one of them either.
There's nothing wrong with Google Maps either. That can get you out of the jam as well.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. Just hit home and off you go.
Hit home, work for the best. Well, lads, thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the podcast. Seán, thanks for being a guest, and I'm sure we'll definitely have on you pretty soon when we find out all my mishaps and all my mistakes if I start doing this hiking business. But thanks again for being on the podcast. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up there? Any bit more bit of advice or anything left out?
Yeah, I think we really covered everything now. But we'll be hoping to help people set up their planning, their navigation, what equipment to bring, and looking forward then to seeing more people out in the hills.
Unreal. And just before we wrap up this podcast, I just want the viewers, or the listeners, I suppose, to take note that when Eric did the intro for Seán on the podcast, he didn't actually introduce and talk to Seán. He just went on his own thing. So you're not the best in the world. The intro is yourself, Eric. I just wanted to highlight that fact.
Yeah, but now it's gone so far. Now it's going to go back to the start and listen to me. You're going to call me out on my crap, Seán. You better do it when I do it, right? That's right, you know.
Well, I didn't want to be rude to our guest this week. And with that said, you can handle the outros this week's episode of the podcast.
Yes, all right. So this week was something a little bit different. We were looking at a bit of an any given hike day this week. It is nice because, you know, we have talked a lot about running, but like we've seen in our running group, a lot of people are running less now and starting to just get out more, starting to do a staycation, and it is great to see, and it's great to see so many people coming home from abroad and starting to get involved and hanging out with groups of friends, and hopefully it will continue to go. We really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It was something different. It's something just to get you thinking about when you go out on a hike. So many of us are doing it, all the different locations, but it's great that we are building this active kind of lifestyle, and whether you're running or hiking, and you see even from my posts, I've been cycling and stuff as well. It's just great to see people getting outdoors and really embracing it. And that's why we decided to go with this kind of podcast this week, is really kind of branch out in all the different activities you can do, especially now that we're so restricted to staying at home. And hopefully it will continue into the winter, and we'll give people the tools and the tips and the tricks to kind of keep doing that and enjoy the staycations as best they can. So with that said, Seán, we'll draw this week to a close, and we'll look forward to next week. And we'll try and have something slightly different again onto the podcast next week, I think.
No pressure at all for that one, Eric. Thanks a million, Seán, once again for being this week on the podcast. This week I wasn't supposed to have the answer, that's why I messed up my lines just there. Thanks a million, lads, for being there. Talk to you guys soon, and best of luck in the heat in Alabama. Take care.
Bye.